All right, let's get into our entrepreneurial mindset. Starting your own security company. Oh, all right, hold on. There we go. Starting your own security company. Okay. An entrepreneur is someone who will jump off a cliff and assemble an airplane on the way down. Sounds like a Marine to me. My name is Bryson Bort. I have founded 3 different companies. I have founded a consultancy named Grim, which was my name back when I was in the intelligence community. From there, I spun out a product company called Scythe, which is my current full-time job. And then I co-founded a 501c3 nonprofit called the ICS Village. So I have done a for-profit consultancy, a for-profit product with raising money, $21 million to date. And I have co-founded a nonprofit. So I have done all of the different things on this, which the advantage here is you can learn from all of my mistakes, because I can't say I've made all of them, but I sure as hell have tried to make most of them. So I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. And I'm not even the best entrepreneur out there. So there's your small print up front. So starting with this, why do you want to do this to yourself? And by yourself, I mean your family, your friends, anybody that is in your circle. This is the starting point. If this is the journey you want to take, this is a journey of commitment. It is one that is going to consume all of you. If you've worked a 9-to-5 job before, this is not a 9-to-5 job. Those of us who are veterans, you remember this when you're in the military, right? You are in all of the time. When you deploy, it is a 24/7 job, because all of these things that can happen and you're responsible for them. And of course, in civilian life, well, we have what approaches a normal social calendar. We have family, we have friends. They are part of this too. I remember when I first started Grim about 11 years ago, and it kind of hit me about half a year in that I hadn't seen my friends since I'd started. So it's really important to kind of assess, no matter how big the idea is or what you're trying to do, the commitment that is required is bigger than you, because people love you, people like you, people want to be with you, and they're not going to get as much of you because you are going to be going down this path. So this is what it looks like, the startup curve. I call it the honeymoon period, right? I have this idea. My spouse has bought into it. My girlfriend, my boyfriend, my friends, everybody's like, we love this. We think it's a great idea. We want you to do it. We're there to support you. And you, of course, are filled with all of this energy and positivity and vision, and you're going to go and change the world. And that initial enthusiasm very quickly hits reality. So I will say it's about 3 months. The first 3 months of the honeymoon period, it is just awesome. You're free. You unplugged from the matrix and you are doing your thing. You are pursuing your passion. You are setting the world on fire. And then the reality of just how hard it is. It is a grind. It is 24/7. Like I said, you don't get to step away from it. And so from there, also the idea meets the reality of what actually works and what doesn't work. Because it turned out an initial idea is like a hypothesis. We think we're going to make money. We think this is the way it works. We think these are our customers. And then you learn what actually does. And so you start to experiment and pivot. We're going to get some more to that. And then at some point, the traction starts to catch. And then from there, you have finalized the idea. And then at this point, it is no longer, how do I get this idea where it needs to be? It's how do I get this idea at all of the places it needs to be? How do I scale? How do I build this team? Because now it's more than you. And this is persistence. So the metaphor I like to think of here is it's like being a predator on the Serengeti. It gets dry. There's no rain. There's no food. And it's just brown for as far as the eye can see. And you continue each day with your ribs sticking out and your tongue hanging out, just surviving, because you know when you get to that starts working phase, that's the rainy season. That's when you get to start to drink. That's when you get to start to eat. You feast, and then there'll be some more, feast and famine from there, but it's the first one. Roughly expect that to take about 18 to 24 months. So in summary, sort of the first 3 to 6 months of the honeymoon period, the reality of what you've actually signed up to starts to hit. The idea starts to run into all of the realities of where it needs to grow. And this is the agility that you have to pivot to. And somewhere around 18 to 24 months, if you survive, if you persist to that, that's when this all starts to come together. So to be an entrepreneur, no offense to anybody in human resources, but I joke here, and it's just an easy one to pick on, right? Nobody as a little kid says, I want to grow up and be in human resources, right? I want to grow up and be a fireman. I want to grow up and be a soldier. I want to be a woman judge, right? We have these dreams. And the reality as an entrepreneur is just like in the military where you had to take care of your fellow soldiers, right? If you're an NCO, you take care of your squad, take care of your platoon. As an officer, you were required to take care of folks, right? It is servant leadership, right? Taking care of others. Being an entrepreneur also encompasses that with everything. And so I specifically put health insurance on here, right? Because that's going to be something that you're going to have to provide, initially thinking of yourself, but then anybody who wants to work for you. So being an entrepreneur is all encompassing of all of these components because the buck stops literally with you. So the two qualities to be an entrepreneur, from my perspective, are first, passion, right? And you'll notice, I just really want to emphasize this. You'll notice money is not on here. Chasing money is not going to be after the honeymoon ends and the reality sets in and things get hard and you're on that slog to finding the idea to catch. And you're just like, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? Money is not going to be what gets you out of bed. Right? So who's the first sergeant in your head yelling at you to get up and get going and continue to motivate you? Is passion. The idea you have should be one that you believe in so much that there's like an itch inside your head that the fact that it doesn't exist in this world bothers you. That's the kind of passion you want. It's the commitment to an idea, right? You are trying to save. You're trying to change the world. That's the level of emotional feeling and investment that you're going to have that is going to be the inner fire to get you to persist through all of the hard things, all of the people that say no, all of the ups and downs, all of the, we got our first customer and no, we don't because our champion left, right? It is the passion for the idea that will persist. The second part is a more pragmatic component of your new reality, which is tolerance for BS, right? That previous slide where I noted with health insurance, everything comes to you. Everything. You are the CEO, you are the janitor. Leave your ego at the door and build a level of saintly patience that you didn't know you possessed for all of the mundane and the arcane administrivia that goes into running a company. Do you think that I wanted to learn how health insurance worked in 50 different states? No, I did not. Did I have to? Yes, I did, right? That is the level of responsibility and the amount of patience and attention to detail that you need to bring because there is nobody else. At the end of the day, when something doesn't happen, there's nobody to go, oh, did you get that? Because it's you. And so that tolerance for BS is with you. The patience you're going to need to build to master all of this is going to be so key for the success of your company and is what keeps and attracts the team that you need to build. So what makes a successful entrepreneur? So I just touched on two key qualities to it, but when we look at the companies that succeed, so what are the startups? What are those qualities that enable them to grow? Well, the first part is the founder and the idea themselves, right? So the founder is the one who comes up with the idea. And by the way, they can be founders. You don't have to do this alone. And we're going to cover that. But the reason the founder is so key to this is, again, with all of those components coming to them. And as we described, the reality of the idea having to change, that agility, that foresight, right? What is my ability to see where I've made mistakes? What's my ability to see ahead, to see where things are going? Because the world's always changing. And so where your idea was here is not going to be the same as the state of your idea here in time. And so the agility, because again, you are driving all of this, you are making the tough calls. That is a key component. And then the second part is, of course, nobody does this alone, right? You are not a founder of one. I mean, you could be a lifestyle consultant, and we're going to cover that. But I think most of us are looking at ideas which are bigger than us, which means we need a team. We need a team that can scale because we can't be everywhere. There is no person that is greater than like a 1.x of a person, right? I mean, the greatest, smartest, most amazing people you know are, like kind of like 1.5 people. They're not 10 people. They're not 100 people. That's where the team comes in. We need a team to succeed. Plus, we don't know everything as founders. We're not specialized in all this stuff. I mean, in the last 5 years as a product CEO, I have learned a lot more about sales, marketing, and product management, where when I started 5 years ago, I knew nothing about that stuff. I didn't understand enterprise sales. I needed a team. I needed experts to teach me that as I went through each of the stages of the journey. And then the final one, and this is where I kind of, we all have seen, I think, these talks where the founders have built and sold the successful company, and they sort of sit there and they're like, yeah, I'm really smart. I'm a genius. Do what I do. And the truth is that the biggest X factor in the success of a startup is timing, also known as luck. So there's a certain feedback loop of, well, I mean, a founder seeing an idea at a time, right? That's a part of it. But then there are all of these macro factors. I'll give you an example. We all just experienced this, right? When COVID hit in 2020 and the pandemic completely changed our entire world. That was timing. Think about how many ideas in startups died because that caught them off guard. It didn't matter how good their idea was. They just were unlucky to have been affected by that, right? If you started a hospitality startup at the beginning of 2020, you probably went out of business. On the other hand, if you had just started a VPN startup, you probably blew up completely overnight because all of this demand, right? That's the kind of thing where timing is outside of your control. And is really the biggest factor in the success of a startup overall when we look at this in the long term. So I have quotes in here from a number of founders. Full disclosure, I am an angel investor and I am invested in Tara Wheeler's Red Queen Dynamics. And here she's talking about, when did I switch from engineer brain to CEO brain? It's like I have the attention span of a gnat. I will tell you as, and this is actually me responding to her, welcome to have to think of everything all at once, constant surprises, and the most context switching ever, right? The success of an engineer is the ability to focus on a task and be left alone and get to wrestle with that problem. CEOs do not get that luxury. Not only do we not get that luxury, we are constantly bombarded with all of this context switching of all of these things. 1 minute it's human resources. The next minute it's a sales call. The next minute it's an operations problem. The next minute it's a customer. And that breadth of being able to just switch through all of these things is where discipline and organization are so key. And again, going back to team, helping a team understand how to work with you, because all of that context switching is really hard to do. So this is the biggest slide out of all of this. And by the way, the slides will be shared afterwards. So the economic model that underpins a company is a really important thing to understand. I cannot tell you how many dozens of conversations I've had with folks that don't understand this, right? How you make revenue as an economic model is a fundamental thing to understand. And I hope it seems simple, and I hope we are able to, everybody gets it after this, because this is the most important part. So basically 2 kinds of companies: consultancy, service-based. An hour of effort equals an hour of revenue. It is based on people. My ability to scale is based on the quality of people that I can get, because I can't charge more hours in the day. And where folks get caught up on this is like, well, I can charge $5,000 an hour. Great. You're still tied to an hour. If there's not an hour, there's no money, right? It is an hourly based services economic model. Products, and this is why there is so much investment in products. And this is why you see all the products in the news, because products, an hour of effort could be worth anything, right? I'm not charging by the hour. The hour doesn't mean anything. It's the product. And whether I spend 1 second on building that product or whether I spend 1 million hours building that product, the only thing that matters is then what's the market willing to pay for that product. And I'm not going to get into the pricing models, right? You can have subscriptions. You can just have straight sales. You can have things broken up. That's not the point. The fundamental economic model, again, am I building a company based on people? And then my economic model is hourly, right? Based on people, even if it's fixed price, right? It's still tied to people effort. Or product. What does the market pay for a product? Okay. If you are interested in building a services company, i.e. a consultancy, I highly recommend Ted's book, Getting Started in InfoSec Consulting. Most of this talk is going to be focused on the product side because that's much more complicated and there's a lot more to it. Again, I started my own consultancy by myself 11 years ago called Grim, one person, grew it from there. The fundamentals there are, of course, right? Being able to sell yourself. How do I sell myself? What kinds of branding? How do I think about that? Pricing, execution, getting paid, the kinds of things I need to build around it. Ted covers that, all of this in his book. So I highly recommend, if that's what you're interested, go do that. Not that the rest of this won't have meaning, but again, the primary focus of this talk is on the product side of building a cybersecurity business, because the services stuff is a lot easier and it grows more organically, where product, there's a lot more complication to think about. All right, so we're building a cybersecurity company, which means I think it's really important to understand the fundamental market. The modern cybersecurity ecosystem was born 10 years ago. I know it's crazy when you think about how young the space is. I mean, to me, the whole epic actually really goes to about 2000, because previous to that, there was just some pieces. Around the year 2000, plus or minus, is the beginning of commercial adoption of firewalls at large. It's not that firewalls hadn't been around for a few years, but that's the tipping point where firewalls became the solution in enterprise. And that means until 2000, fundamentally, we did not segregate our networks from other people's networks, right? That's how young our space is. And then the modern cybersecurity ecosystem starts with Target in 2013, because previous to that, firewalls and AV was fundamentally about all that a large enterprise would budget for. After Target is where you see the Cambrian explosion of money into budgets, because after this, all the enterprise boards were like, okay, we get cyber risk. That's what you nerds were saying. Now we understand. That's a business risk. There is appreciable impact to the business. We need to solve that. That we can quantify, we can do something about. Here's the blank check, solve it. And then in corollary, that's where you see all of the VC money pouring into this market. So I think it's really important to understand this, because this is the point where all of these categories and all of these products, and you just see all of this investment because the budget and attention started to be there. Now, it is important to note that just because money was there, that it doesn't mean that money is equally there. So not every market category, every interest equally has the same amount of attention. And so the easiest way to think about that is, and this is really important to understand, every company has what I call the budget line. Okay, so if I have an x-axis being the amount of money, and it starts with, well, what's the size of my company? Am I a $100 million company? Am I a $10 billion company? Am I a small business that makes $200,000 a year, right? That's my revenue. And the higher the revenue, right, the higher that line starts. And the first notch we put on that y-axis against the revenue is the amount of budget that goes towards operations. What are we spending our money on for thing that we do that makes us money, right? If we are a cookie company, our budget primarily goes to making and selling cookies. And so some percentage of the revenue starts on that line, that's our operational budget. That is the largest budget because that is the core revenue piece. Now, if we make enough money and we're a modern business to scale, then of course the next line that's relevant to us here is going to be IT. Well, the line that starts here goes to here, and the scope of the line changes, or the slope of the line changes based on different factors, but kind of going like this. So operational budget down to IT, because this is what I need to be able to scale as a modern business. Now, some fraction of IT goes to security. And then key to here to understanding where your market is within the modern cybersecurity ecosystem that's grown, then you start getting into niche stuff. So recognizing IT is typically, somewhere between 1 to 10% of operational budget. Security is somewhere around kind of the same thing, typically sort of 3 to 6%, and then niche stuff. So that's really important when we start looking later at addressable market, is recognizing just how much money is there even to go after. Because you can have the greatest, most innovative idea. If there's not money already there, then what are you really chasing, right? Market education is really difficult, because now you're going to the life cycle of, wait, do you know I exist? Great, you know I exist. Here's my idea. Oh, you don't understand my idea because you've never heard of it. It's brand new. It's innovative. And now that you know my idea and you think it's a great idea, go get the budget for it. Let's say all of that goes perfectly. That's like a 1 to 3 year life cycle to getting a contract from a company, right? 1 to 3 years of work, which is going to be a lot of work. And even if everything goes perfectly, just to make one success. That's the difference between a market and idea building or outside of a market. So products, right? Where I talked about the Cambrian explosion, these are all of these products. These are the market categories. So this is from Momentum Cyber. They put this out annually. Highly recommend if you're building a cybersecurity company, go and check out. I'm sorry I didn't put the link. I will add the link in when I share the slides so everybody can know where to go. And this tells you from the money side how the market looks, what the categories are, and then who's already in that. So what is the idea, right? So you've got this idea. Do not make the mistake of being like, I have such a great idea, I don't want anyone to steal it. Look, if somebody else can take your idea and do it, and do it better than you, then it wasn't a good idea to begin with, right? Again, you are a core part of what makes the idea. So don't do this, I'm in stealth, I can't tell you my idea. You need to talk to people. Now, I mean, I'm not saying go like give everything away or talk to people you don't trust, but talk to people, talk to more people, and then ask them for help. When I look at how my social network, my professional network has just exponentially grown in the decade I've been doing this, it's because I made friends, I asked for help, and they introduced me to other friends, and that's how I continue to meet people. So talk to people, ask them to continue to introduce you to other people, and then you just sort of find this starting to splinter out, and you iterate and you learn and you start to grow in these directions, which again is purposefully driven because it's around your idea. And by the way, when I say talk, I mean listen. I cannot tell you as an angel investor how many pitches and conversations I've had with folks who just wanted to talk at me. I can tell you, having done this for a long time, I kind of have seen a lot, and I'm going to get there pretty quickly and where you're going. And first, if it's hard for you to explain, then you don't have it down. And that's okay, right? That's again what this iteration turns out. My personal experience from when I got the idea for creating Scythe, when Target came to me in 2016, coincidentally, not related to Target creating all this, but literally 3 years later, Target comes to me and asks me to build them something. And the 2 years between Target coming to me and working on the idea to 2018, when I decided to raise money and spin it out of Grimm, I probably had about 1,000 conversations iterating through this myself. And I was beyond frustrated, and I'm sure the other side was, because I couldn't actually articulate the idea well. I could describe what I was doing in an engineering sense, but because it was innovative at the time and it didn't look like what people were used to, it took me a long time to figure out, well, kind of what are the words that helped shorten that conversation. And I would, as I iterated through this, I'd be like, okay, that clicked. I'm going to use that again, and I'm going to keep trying to build. And over hundreds of conversations, eventually I started to understand the proposition because I listened. Okay. Keep in mind, the best tech isn't the point here. It's not about what's the latest mousetrap. It's again, what's the value that I can drive? And then as I'm doing that, the entrepreneur goal here is, what is the minimum viable product? What is the base set of features that I need to make sure this thing has, that this idea comes packaged, that somebody would pay for? And then, of course, leading to then, well, why would someone pay for it, right? Be your own devil's advocate. Understand the graveyards of those who've tried this and failed. Understand the levels of success that have been. If it's a completely new market category, you're probably not going to find folks doing this. I can tell you when I was doing it in 2016, there was really only one other example at the time, and I was looking at it in a completely different way. And then I found, as I iterated and started to try to raise money in 2018, I found that suddenly I was in a category that I didn't even know existed, and that there were other folks in it. And I spent 18 months iterating and trying to understand what they did. And let me tell you, if you think marketing is challenging just from the way everything has artificial intelligence and blockchain to sell you and snow you on it, trying to actually understand exactly what a competitor does through the marketing fluff is even harder. And I had to try to figure that out. So, of course, doing this alone is not something we always have to do. And most commonly, there's somebody you probably have a strong relationship with professionally, that's what I'm suggesting, that you want to co-found with. And you're like, okay, so you're very close, right? This is your best friend forever, BFFs. We want to start a company together. And of course, there's no better way to kill a friendship than to go into business together. So how do we do this successfully? Because it doesn't mean it's not a bad idea. I mean, there are plenty of movies on friends starting bars together and everybody's happy and it works out and hilarity ensues. What are your roles? Write those down. Write specifically what the roles and responsibilities are. And then every month, every quarter, sit down and review those together. What are you doing versus what am I doing? Is that what we still want to be doing? Let's also run some hypothetical scenarios. Am I allowed to hire somebody without talking to you? Am I allowed to hire somebody of this type without talking to you? Who decides what benefits are? Who decides what salaries are? Who decides if we get to fire somebody? How do we counsel people? Like, walk through those things together and document it. The other mistake I see folks making is, and this is not as hard when it's just the two of you, but when you start having 3 or 4 co-founders together, you do not have to distribute equity at the beginning. So what I mean by that is, hey, there's 4 of us. Well, each person should get 25%. That's obvious, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. But life happens, things change. And some of those folks turn out to not contribute as much as you might think that they should or want to, or whatever it is, right? So don't put yourself in a straitjacket of resentment and problems, because of course the other problem with this is equity equals control, and somebody that becomes hostile, somebody that disappears, that now has 25, 33, 50% of the company, that's a big problem, even if everything's working well. So wait for it. Decide in the future at what point, right? Define the trigger. What is the trigger that we decide that we're going to sit down and all review this? Again, going back to expectations of what we think people should have done, then give equity based on that with the definition of what we think success looks like. Some pearls of wisdom from Alyssa Miller. Write down your vision and mission early. Why are you launching this business and how do you plan to achieve that goal? And then review those documented pieces, right? Right back to reviewing the roles and responsibilities. Make sure that same conversation is happening on what you're doing and what success looks like, and then continue to revisit that. If you're by yourself, this is also a good way to hold yourself to task, and it'll make it easier as you start to scale and bring other people on, because these notes are what you can hand them. All right, so some really basic stuff. First thing you should do, incorporate. It does not cost a lot of money to build a legal structure. Make sure that your name is in fact available. So if you have a very generic name, this is part of the reason that there are so many made up word names in the cybersecurity space, because they are trying to get around this. Incorporate. Don't spend a lot of time trying to be clever. If you're just beginning, for a few bucks, you can create your own LLC. Just make sure the name is clear. And the crazier and wackier that the name is, the more likely it's free. You can check it. You can Google search it, make sure it's available. And then you're doing business as is basically like the mask name that you can use. So for example, for us, Scythe is our doing business as name for my product company. SMFPS, which I will not say what that means here, but you can probably figure it out, is in fact the legal entity. The other thing you should do when you create this legal structure is go get an employee identification number from the IRS. That's free. That just takes time. It's kind of like 1, 2, 3 weeks, put it in, you get it back, you're good to go, right? Those are the basics, right? So if you think this is something you want to do for a few bucks, you can get this all started. Then when you actually want to do operations, you're going to need to create and register in your state and possibly even at the local and county level. The clever places to incorporate, the reason you see most corporations that are large incorporated in Delaware is that they have the most business-friendly regulations, and it's very easy to do it. So that's why Delaware is very common. My recommendation, just start simple. Do it in your own state. You can always change that later and try to be clever. In the beginning, it's just going to be harder because you're going to have to register in Delaware, and you're going to have to register anyway in your local state to do business. So to begin with, just begin, make it easy. And then the US government, again, these are things we can do that administratively set us up in the future. Get a cage code, get a DUNS number. Also, you can do all of that for free. So this is just a lot of the free basics that, again, just get them in place, whether you use it or not an issue, but it doesn't cost a lot of money and it doesn't cost a lot of time. It's just the kind of thing that doing it later when you need it, then it's going to be painful. Recognize there are some special designations. Hey, look at those ones at the top: veterans and disabled veterans. And then of course, women, minority, and economically disadvantaged. So take a look at this. There are a lot of things at the local and the state level where you can get additional tax advantages by looking at these kinds of things. All right, to raise or not to raise, that is the question. So this is where everybody starts to go, when or why should I raise money? Okay. If you are a services company, you probably are not going to raise. Okay. I mean, it is not 100% no, but it is like 99.999% no. And the reason for that is just, why would you, right? I'm not going to take this money and hire people that sit on the bench until I can get them work. That's not a good use of money. Again, going back to the economic model of services, services are an hour of time to an hour of revenue. That does not scale at the way a product can get me a valuation. Services valuations are typically 0.8 to 1.3x of the value of revenue for the company because of that. Whereas products can be any multiple. Most commonly today, startups generally are getting about 8 to 12x. That is down a lot from before 2022, when those valuations were more like 40 to 60. So kind of giving you a feel for the macro environment and timing and how things change. If you are trying to pursue a product company, you're probably going to want to raise at some point. How and when is tricky, but the key here is there's going to be money for this. And recognizing that there are different kinds of money is what we're going to get into. But fundamentally, if you have a services company, do not take somebody else's money, right? If you have some family or friends that want to give you a loan, want to buy into a little piece, to just enough to kind of get started so that you're not, that delay of, I'm no longer making a job and I need some time to get on my feet. Okay, that's different. That's not really this kind of raising. That's just a minor investment. And you're going to grow organically as you make the money to hire and grow organically. So now we're a product company and we're looking at types of investors. So this took me a long time to figure out because nobody really ever tells you this stuff. And I was wasting a lot of time talking to people that I didn't need to. So the different kinds of venture capital are their funds and private equity. Private equity are like family law offices and other types that are really looking at much later stage companies. So if you are not a Series C, D plus company, right? You've been doing this for a number of time. You've already raised money multiple times. You are making 20, 30, 40, $50 million. I mean, these folks write $50 to $100 million checks. And that might sound cool. You're like, wow, I'd love to start with $50 to $100 million. Of course, who wouldn't? But how long would it take you to effectively put that capital in play is not worth the risk to anybody. It doesn't make sense. Do not waste your time talking to private equity. It's just, and they want to, right? It's going to be the 23-year-old Stanford grad who's just trying to stack names, and they don't care about your time. And time's your most valuable resource. And they just want to meet you and be like, we want to build a relationship now. So in 3 years, no, don't, right? You want to meet the folks that actually are fund VCs who specialize in pre-seed and seed level money. They write checks that are $500,000, $1 million. They put into rounds that are $500,000, that are $3 million rounds, right? That's who we're looking at doing. Angels are typically former entrepreneurs and operators like me, and we write small checks. So we are not the people that anchor your stuff. We're the folks who are like, hey, I like your idea. I'll give you a decent sized check, right? Here's 5,000, here's 25,000, here's 50,000. And you kind of use us to get a little bit going so that you get started. And then eventually you can get a VC in. Friends and family are also an option. I know incubators on here. A lot of the major cities have incubators. It's hard to rate those, but they're mostly for space and connections. And then it's worth noting the government also can get you cash. So the Small Business Innovation, SBIR, they're not taking equity, and they'll write checks, typically like $50,000, to get your idea along development in 3 to 6 months to a certain phase. And then there are additional phases for additional pieces. But $50,000 to be like, well, that's enough for me to tinker with this for 3 to 6 months and quit my job. That's an easy way to get started. And I haven't given anything up to somebody else to do it. Because so if you are interested in being an angel, and this is my motivation, and you'll find others, but I think it's worth noting because some of you have success already, even if you haven't started your own company, and this is an option. So being an angel, you're building the next generation. You are not running it, right? You are writing a check. You don't get a vote. And the key to being able to be an angel is networking, deal flow, right? You got to be able to see different startups with different ideas and invest in what you know. So being an angel means you've got to find these folks and these ideas yourself. My recommendation, invest in increments of $25,000. So you're not like constantly trying to do this. Just whatever the idea is, 25 is kind of the minimum. That's what an entrepreneur is easy for them, right? Hey, I don't want to like get $3,000 for you and have a bunch of $3,000 checks. That doesn't get me very far. But 25K is a good increment for that. So kind of gives you an idea of where you would be from an angel perspective for this to make sense. And it's worth noting that there are platforms out there that allow you to put your IRA and be able to invest, do angel investing through that. All right, so you're going to raise. And this is from Ron Gula. And there's the link to his blog on it. Basically, 5 key things to the pitch deck. The pitch deck is the PowerPoint presentation that goes to investors. And when you go to a VC investor, this is what's going to get you to the investment committee. And you've got 30 minutes to sell the investment committee for them to decide to buy in. Step 1 slide. What's the problem? Do not spend, again, you got 30 minutes. Do not spend all of your time explaining what the problem is. 1 slide, here's the issue. Now, how are we addressing the problem? This is your solution. This is where you should be focused. You got more than 1 slide for this. And this is, again, where those iterative conversations become so important, because now you can crystallize the elevator pitch of your idea in a way that these investors will understand. Now, the proof. Okay, I believe your idea is the greatest thing of all time. What's your proof that you're actually going to be able to do it? The 4th one is, I am surprised how many people forget this. You're asking for funding, and yet you don't say what you want. So how much do you want? How do you plan to spend it? And then finally, what's your vision, right? How, if you got this money, what would be those milestones and minimal viable product that you're building to do this? And then I put this as an asterisk because I think it's a big deal. I personally would add a 6th section, which is your team. Sell yourself and your team. This goes back to the how of your solution. This is the people side of the how. This is technically what we're building. These are the people I'm building it with. And then when you pitch, you're going to be doing it over and over and over. For my seed raise for Scythe, spinning it out of Grim. So we've been building it for 2 years. I've been investing my own money for those 2 years in building it. I did 80 pitches before I got my initial funding. So just give you an idea personally, it was 10 months, 80 pitches, 79 rejections, right? So pitch, it never ends. Planes, trains, and automobiles, in your sleep, to anybody that will listen. Now, these are not the formal pitches, right? This is the practice part. When I talked about talking and listening, that was getting to this point. Now that you've got a pitch deck and you've got your ideas put together, tell it to anybody that will listen, because, you know, whether that is 30 seconds of opportunity in the elevator, whether that is your friends who need to hear this for the 70th time and they love you so much they're willing to put up with it and give you that patience. This is how you will crystallize your idea. You will make it yours, and it is your best chance to sell this to somebody else. By sell, I mean to the investors. So the process. Here's the cold, hard reality. Investment is a very insular community. In the United States, it is very biased to the West Coast. There is a very tech bro thing. It is very relationship based. Speaking from my personal experience as a veteran in both military and national security, that was seen as a negative against me. Again, the West Coast folks were like, you don't know product. You don't know commercial. You're a national security Army officer. You don't know anything about this stuff. And there was an inherent bias against us. There are VCs, particularly in the DC Maryland, Virginia area, right? This is what, shoot, I'm blanking on it. I'm going to say Mach 37. Bob Ackerman, again, Ron Gula is a big player in this. Paladin Capital. These folks are all much more veteran friendly, but you're going to find the great majority of VCs are not. ForgePoint, actually, I should also note them. ForgePoint's very veteran friendly with a lot of former service officers running that VC. So there is a bias. There is a bias against all sorts of types that do not look like the people that they know. So if you're a woman, if you're a minority, it's hard. If you're a vet, it's hard. There are all of these gatekeeping pieces to it, and it is hard. So finding the champions, finding the right places, this stuff does not just work easily. And I think it's really important to call this out because it is a very white male dominated system around the West Coast. And anybody that does not fit that is going to have to try harder in all sorts of different ways, including if you're a veteran. Finding your people, right? Not every investment firm is the right fit. I will tell you that. Right, this is like getting married. when you take money from these folks, like you're in, they are your partners until divorce, until the end, right? It is the hardest moment when you finally are been going through this process and you're like all the rejections, all the no's, all the pitching, and and you get ghosted all the time, right? And then finally someone's like, actually, you know what? I want to give you $2 million. And you're just like, oh, $2 million. Oh my God. And it lights up. And then you realize they're the wrong company. They're the wrong person. It's okay to turn down money. And I'm telling you, it's hard, but it is worth it. Make sure you're getting into business with the right people. Treat this like a marriage. Addressable market. Okay. So, all right, there we go. So addressable market is the fact that, again, I talked about this before where I was talking about Target, I was talking about Momentum Cyber, I was talking about the economic model. The idea is that there are these different customers with different budget amounts tied to different pricing models. And being able to piece those together from a bottom-up approach of there are this many of these customers in the world who buy things this way and this is what they're willing to pay is the way you're supposed to build an addressable market. The most common mistake is, well, we're basically a competitor to Uber. Uber's a $10 billion market. If I just got 1% of that market, that's $1 kajillion. That's my addressable market. That's lazy. Nobody believes that. And also, by the way, just like the AI generated image here with a made up word, your initial swag for an addressable market is also going to be pretty much wrong and complete fantasy. That's okay. The point in the pitch deck is the investors want to see the way you think. So it's the process and how you think that's important here. And again, do it from the bottom up, right? There are 5,000 companies globally in the world that have a red team product budget. They'd be willing to spend $50,000. That's my initial market. That's a clear, understood thing. And then they can debate you and argue with that. But we're now debating your thinking, not the made up number. Don't be afraid to be original. Innovation is hard. This goes back to market challenges. Economics. So a person is not just their hourly salary. This is a common mistake folks make. When you're building a business, it is the wrap rate of a person. What are the benefits that I'm offering to employees? And then what is the back office costs to support them? These are your categories when you're building up what a person costs. So don't just look at a salary and be like, that's, somebody costs $100,000, $100,000. More likely they're $135,000 because that's actually the total cost now that you're responsible for everything. And so this is the key to the back office understanding. And then, of course, there are all sorts of other things that you have to think about since we're running out of time real quickly, right? Make sure you're thinking through these. Of course, I did not bore you with an entire class on all of the administrative pieces, but you understand you're responsible for them. Finally, as you start to grow up, you're going to find that you go through these iterations again, right? I got this amount of money, the honeymoon, all these ideas I can do, the wilderness, which is the reality that that money now translates into hiring people and trying to scale. People is the hardest part of this, right? People hiring, people management, people firing, that continual process is always going to be a challenge. And as you start to hit these plateaus, then you get to focus on the execution of the idea as you move through the organizational challenges of people. Every month, you will face a random existential crisis that no amount of planning can survive for. You will get past it. You will survive. And at some point, they stop happening, and you're not alone as you go through it. Becoming an entrepreneur is like joining an exclusive club where the only requirement is the desire to join. Every member, including me, will help you. So if you want to do this, if you have any idea, reach out to me or any entrepreneur that you know. I promise you they will help you. Instead of looking at the successes, I've been doing an annual series with founders focusing on all of the failures. Here are 2022 and the 2023 panels that we did. Highly recommend checking those out. They're some of the best panels I've seen. Additional resources and more. And that concludes that part for now. So thank you so much and look forward to your questions and reaching out. Take care.